Listeners, we have a small but exciting format change to tell you about. We kept noticing the same problem. We'd get into a genuinely brilliant conversation with a guest and then face an impossible edit, cutting out quality content that, in all honesty, would be an upgrade to most other politics podcasts, just to squeeze everything into one non-intimidating 1-hour episode.
And we know from your feedback at our editorial meetings that the deep dive topics are exactly what you want more of, not less. So we've just decided to stop fighting it. We're giving in to you. And from now on, when we have a guest, we're going to split the show in two. So your newsy section will land on Thursday as usual, and then the full uncut deep dive will follow on Friday morning.
Same week, same guests, nothing left on the cutting room floor. You get 2 commute episodes and, of course, Sunday school. We hope you enjoy getting even more Quiet Riot for your buck, and we reserve the right to play around with the days and duration of the shows as they go out to get it bang on, but we'll give you a fair warning of any other changes.
So this week, we're talking about that HS2 report and the seeming failure of modern British governments to effectively project manage any infrastructure build-out. And then tomorrow, we're going to be covering all the latest from Palestine, including a look back to the Balfour Declaration, the two-state solution, why it's in peril, and what the hell we can do about it. Quiet Riot.
Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot. I'm Alex.
And I'm Naomi.
And I'm producer Kenny.
We promised you a Labour leadership drama-free week, and we intend to deliver in this new offshoot of Quiet Riot, in which we do a deep dive into the things that are simply too complex to be tackled in short bits.
Now, with the world in crisis over the Iran war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, Israel seems to be increasing its aggression in Lebanon and the West Bank, also getting up to some pretty sketchy stuff in Gaza itself. It really does merit attention. As you know, the guest this week is Layla Moran MP. Layla is the only British Palestinian MP. Who better to dive into this with?
Quiet Riot. We are moving on to a topic that, depending on your political postcode, is either one of the defining moral crises of our time or something that still somehow gets filed under complicated. Palestine, and specifically what happens next when the facts on the ground keep shifting with every new settlement poured into concrete. Because while much of the world's attention has rightly been on Gaza, a quieter but equally consequential story has been unfolding on the West Bank, where Israel continues to expand settlements at a pace that makes a mockery of any serious two-state conversation. The E1 corridor east of Jerusalem, long considered by diplomats to be a red line, has become something of a red line that everyone keeps stepping over while tutting loudly. And then there is the question of Britain's role in all of this. Not just now, but going back over a century to a single letter signed in 1917 by then Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour, which promised a homeland for one people and a land already home to another, with a polite footnote about not harming the people already living there. That footnote, shall we say, did not age well.
We wrote something called the Balfour Declaration in 1917. The Balfour Declaration, as you know, says His Majesty's government views with favour the establishment in Palestine of a homeland for the Jews, it being understood that nothing shall be done to prejudice the rights of the existing Palestinian population, something like that, which is a classic example of selling the same camel twice. So the first half of the sentence is the one that everybody remembers very fondly in the Jewish community, and the second half of the sentence is the one that was never enacted, was never made good. The bit that says nothing shall be done to prejudice the rights of the existing Arab peoples in Palestine.
Earlier this year, Layla and dozens of fellow MPs and peers signed a letter calling for a formal British apology over the Balfour Declaration, backing the Britain Owes Palestine campaign and its argument that the UK violated international law throughout the mandate period. It is bold, it is historically loaded, and it is exactly the kind of thing Westminster tends to find deeply inconvenient. So naturally, we asked Layla to come in and talk about it. Layla, the E1 settlement plan has been a flashpoint for a long time now, and yet here we are watching it inch forward. At what point would you say that the continued settlement building on the West Bank makes a two-state solution not just difficult, but physically impossible?
Yeah, Naomi, this is it. Okay, so it is well understood. And the reason why the E1 settlement, for those who have been following settlement building in Palestine for decades, there's a reason why this is one of the few so-called red lines. And the irony of all of this is the green line of the 67 borders in which we all believe a two-state solution should exist. With land swaps is often the language that is used. I mean, we are so past this point with so many of the settlements that have now been built. And for a long, long, long time, myself and others and, political parties from across the spectrum have said, if we are going to stop a two-state solution from becoming unviable, we need to stop the settlement building. But E1 was almost so audacious that no one really ever thought it would actually happen. Yeah. It was always part of a much longer gestated plan that sat in the Israeli Knesset, that it existed, and everyone needed to stop it ever happening because this is it. Because if you look at the map of Jerusalem, what it essentially does, and so the history of this is personal. My family come from Jerusalem. We are a Jerusalemite Palestinian family. We are Christians. And our family history was we had a house that is now very much on the Israeli side of the Green Line. We accept we're never going to probably get that back. And it's a sad thing. All we want in the future is a Palestinian state to call our own, where I can, bring my baby child one day and show them our family history and, just to have peace. And for it to be an ideally contiguous thing, Gaza was always problematic, but there are solutions to Gaza. But the idea that the West Bank itself would be non-contiguous is what people would consider the death knell to the two-state solution. And this is what the E1 settlement is. So let me just break it down just a little bit what it is.
Yeah.
So it's, first of all, the reason why it's come to the fore now is because it's been put out to tender. This is the key bit. Whilst it was always, it's been a plan for an incredibly long time, but we have moved several step changes forward. The Israeli government says, as a direct result of Gaza, this is almost a punishment for the international community and the Palestinians for opposing their incursion into Gaza. And this is the politics of it is tied into Gaza. But it's also, while all eyes are elsewhere, this is being allowed to happen. And an ultra-right-wing Israeli government, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, etc., who have a stated aim of not just gobbling up Gaza, but also bits of southern Lebanon into other parts of the Levant at the same time. This is part of a wider plan that the extremes of the Israeli government have. This is 3,400. Now, it's called homes, but it's not a small, little, cute 2 up, 2 down. No. A home could be a tower block. And so what we are looking at here is an enormous illegal settlement, which is a flagrant violation of international law. Bear in mind, this is in a climate where we had the ICJ opinion that said that the occupation was illegal. Yeah. It made it very clear, and Britain has accepted this. The Prime Minister has verbally accepted that this is true. He's a lawyer in his background. And it is the position of this government that it shouldn't be built. And yet, and this is the bit that sticks in my throat, and yet we have not meaningfully stopped illegal trade with these illegal settlements. By the back door, by a lack of, and labelling is not enough, which is what some people advocate for. No, I'm sorry. I think most British people, when they hear what's happening here, and they understand that the food and services coming from these settlements that economically are helping them to survive, are being bought by British people, they would balk at that. They would be appalled to know that that is happening, but it is. And the call for a very long time has been ban trade with the illegal settlements. As it was the moral thing to do, now it is the legally correct thing to do as a result of the ICJ judgment. And the government just claims it's all far too complicated. And my argument now is we have gone so far. I mean, there's a good moral argument for putting that kind of pressure on Israel anyway. There are issues around, labeling and la la la. Well, I'm sorry, this is not beyond the wit of man to solve. And actually, I would argue it is for the Israeli government in part to solve. And the presumption should now be, in my view, that and if there is a chance that a goods or a service is coming from an illegal settlement, then we shouldn't be trading.
No, of course not.
We shouldn't be allowed to buy. We shouldn't be putting our citizens in the position where they might be actively supporting this.
You signed a letter calling for a formal British apology over the Balfour Declaration. For anyone who thinks that sounds like relitigating, pretty old history now, make the case, why does a letter signed in 1917, during the First World War, still matter to a Palestinian child in Ramallah today?
It's not just a Palestinian child in Ramallah. It's Palestinians in the UK. It's the Palestinian diaspora across the world. And I would urge everyone who's like, what are you talking about? Go and watch a film. There's a film that I would urge you to watch called Palestine 36.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, please do. And it's a Palestinian director. Everything was filmed in Palestine. It's got Jeremy Irons, who I'm a huge fan of, and who plays Balfour. And it tells the story of how the British mandate operated. Now, I'm so conflicted by this in so many ways because my great-grandfather, a man called Wasif Jawhariya, he wrote diaries which have been translated into English, and my family get no money from this at all. But if you're interested in the period, it's primary source material. He wrote a diary that was contemporaneous from 1908 all the way through to the 1960s. And he chronicles this period, and he was an employee of the mandate.
Right.
So, and many Palestinians were hugely Anglophile. They love Britain. I am proud to have seen our old British Palestinian passports from the period. It honestly sends shivers down my spine. The feeling was at the time that they were being told they would be fine, that they were being told that they were being listened to, and they were part of it, and they were being asked to administer this. And it was the Brits who lied to them. There is another book I'd recommend by a man called Peter Sambrook called The Policy of Deceit. And what he did, he's an academic, and it's, I think last year or the year before that he released it. He went back into the National Archives and looked at the original paperwork that came from Whitehall about the promises made to both the Palestinians, but also to the Hashemite kingdoms, to all the different countries that were involved. And it's called the policy of deceit because our country actively lied, knowingly lied, and he's proven this now. It's what we knew anecdotally from families who were there at the time, and it's been passed down almost as a legend. But now he's got the paperwork to prove it. And so the apology, this all rings in the history that Palestinian families across the world, and there are far more Palestinians out of Palestine than there are in Palestine, we are told these stories. We are told these stories all the time. And so this isn't a wound that has healed for Palestinians.
It's intergenerational
trauma. It's intergenerational trauma that we tell to. And I am just so disappointed that Britain has walked away and actively forgets this history. It actively forgets. I think if you ask most people in this country, where did Britain rule? Where did Britain have an active influence on world affairs? And when they see Palestine and Israel conflict, and it's all, as you say, complicated, it all gets put into the all too complicated pile. But I think they also feel it's a bit arm's length because it's not one of the countries
It's not India.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, we did have an active role in where we end up now. And my argument is, if we understood that better, not in a hair shirts way, and I'm not someone who calls for financial reparations or anything like that. All I want is remember, I'm British Palestinian. Half of me is British, half of me is Palestinian, and the internal conflict is real. All I want is for Britain to own its own history and say to the people of Palestine, we didn't treat you right. We recognize that. And because we recognize that, we are going to go above and beyond in our quest to help deliver that two-state solution so you have a home to call your own, to bring your children to one day in freedom and security. And Britain right now in its foreign policy shies away from that point. It hides behind other players. And it's true, it can't do it alone. But I have consistently tried to, through the stories of my family, through my position in Parliament, make the case that we cannot shy away from our own involvement and our own culpability in how we've ended up in this situation, because that just helps to drive action.
And, we have done it for Hong Kong.
Yes.
We have said to the people of Hong Kong who are needing to flee persecution because they've been pro-democracy activists or whatever, we have offered them routes to residency here. So there is that precedent. I mean, we treated the people of Afghanistan appallingly who'd worked for the British government, and we abandoned them under the fall of Kabul. So surely, it's not just Palestine, but there is obviously
what I'm not calling for is like my cousins who live in Jerusalem to be given British passports, even though they used to have them back in the day. Like, that's not what I'm asking for. But what I am asking for is when the government says we're going to evacuate 200 children from Gaza, and in fact that transpires that it's not 200 children, it's 200 people, which is about, 20 kids, and then the surrounding people who they're needed to be supporting. It's the government just remembers what happened. It accepts what happened. And I would also say this, the thing, and I've said it consistently, people question, is this ever solvable? We started by talking about E1 and 2 states. There is a critical ingredient that is missing from a 2-state solution, and that is hope. And every year that I have spoken about this publicly, my hope dwindles more and more and more, and it will never fully go away. And some days I do just want to sort of throw my head in my hands and just give up and never talk about it again. And it's just a sort of, I can't even describe it. It's almost like my whole heart goes into a pit in my stomach, thinking about what I from where I sit now. If we don't do something, I think by the time I am on my deathbed, there will be no Palestine for any of us to go visit.
That's the direction of travel.
That's the direction of travel.
The direction of travel.
And if there are listeners who are like, I don't want that to happen, I don't know much about it, well, go and find out about it. So that's my first call to action.
And we will leave links.
Go and find out a bit more about it and use those 2 links. The other one, A Line in the Sand by James Barr is another book that I would recommend, a really thin history book. Factual, not woke. That just talks about the facts of what happened, but then also fight for it and ask your MP to fight for it, because it is important. And we've seen what instability it causes across the world. This US-Israeli incursion into Iran. This is all part of this instability that we helped to cause decades and decades and decades ago. Let's at least do something about the bits we can do.
Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot.
I stand before you today beneath the emblem of the United Nations to confirm the historic decision of the British government to recognise the State of Palestine. This step, alongside friends and partners, reflects a long-standing truth that statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people, and that 2 states is the only path to security and lasting peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike. But recognition must be a spur, not a substitute for urgent action. A ceasefire now, the release of all hostages, the restoration of aid, and a lasting framework for peace. Recognition is about the future, but it is rooted in our past. 75 years ago, Britain was rightly proud to recognise the State of Israel. But the promise of upholding Palestinian rights has gone unfulfilled. For decades, my country supported a 2-state solution, but only recognised 1 state. That changes now.
I know that you welcomed the British government recognising the Palestinian state. But the flip side is that, as you said, the Israeli government is now getting up to stuff as a kind of punishment.
Yeah, punishment, yeah.
And they say that explicitly. Yes. Like, I saw a story a couple of days ago that Ben Gvir is now authorizing the displacement of the Khan al-Ahmar, this Bedouin tribe that lives in Palestinian territory, as a direct revenge for the ICC apparently seeking a warrant for his arrest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing that really needs to change is in Israel.
Yeah.
And what I don't know is there's an election coming up. Are any parties offering Israeli people a route out of this? Are any Israeli parties saying, we wouldn't do this E1 settlement, it's wrong? Because unless that happens...
Israeli people are very mobile people.
Yeah.
Many of them have friends and family all across the world. It's a very well-networked country. And so what do you say to your MP if you're going to write in about this? I think the key thing is the banning of settlement goods. Right?
Yeah.
That's the key thing that needs to happen.
Least we can
At
do.
the very least we can do. But these kinds of sanctions, I think, are important. But
Yeah.
you are absolutely right that we also, I think, have a responsibility to raise up the small number of voices. But there are voices in Israel who are actively trying to oppose this. They're not political parties, but they are movements. And the one I would point people towards is one called Standing Together, which is made up of Israelis and Palestinians. Those Palestinians often have Israeli passports, but are not Israeli. They are Palestinians who happen to live inside the bounds of Israel. And they work together to try and influence politics locally. There are branches, by the way, in the UK. There is a Standing Together. There are branches across the UK, and they are worth a follow on places like Instagram and others. So that's another thing that you can also do. I'm not going to overstate how big they are and their influence on the election. I think it is we are in a dire state, and it is fair to say that I don't see any coalition, whether it's the anti-Net, because there are two big blocks in Israeli politics. There's basically the Netanyahu bloc and the anti-Netanyahu bloc. I don't see their Overton window shifting so that it makes it palpably better, but I do genuinely believe that the non-Netanyahu bloc would, at the very least, listen more to the calls from the international community. I do believe that.
Yeah.
Layla, listening to you talk, and it's not the first time I've obviously heard you on this subject, I'm always struck by the passion and the intensity and the emotion that you bring to this for obvious reasons. But I've always wanted to ask, because you are one of the few people in Westminster, perhaps the only person of significance.
You're the only Palestinian.
I'm the only
MP,
British Palestinian MP. There's Alex Sobel is the only British Israeli MP.
Right.
But we do stuff together.
Yeah.
Well, that's a relief.
Standing
But,
together.
so you're the only person for whom Palestine isn't just a foreign policy issue. It's a family issue. I've long wondered whether you think that gives you a position of relative power because you can humanize some really difficult, gnarly issues, or whether it actually makes you less powerful because critics can just dismiss you as being personally invested.
Yeah.
I definitely think I'm not sure power is quite the right word. There are times in all lives, but in a political career, where I didn't ask for this. Like when I went for election as the MP for Oxford West and Abingdon, we did mention that, family from Jerusalem, but we really did not major in any way on me having Palestinian heritage at all. I am the representative for Oxford West and Abingdon because I love Oxford West and Abingdon and I'm a Liberal Democrat and that's my values. And at no point at any time when I've been elected, certainly in the early years, did that ever come up. In fact, I kind of hid it, and I'll tell you why, because my mother told me to, knowing that it would probably attract people to judge me. They would assume something about me.
Yeah.
I hope.
And that is weirdly something you have in common with a lot of British Jews. That
Absolutely right.
They're
They
also
hide.
told to
I've hidden.
don't advertise.
That's right.
it.
I hid my Palestinian heritage because and my mother advised, don't do it. People will judge you. I hope in the way I talk about this that I confound those who might say, well, of course you would say that.
As you will know, this has been an extraordinarily difficult day for many members in this House. But for me, this is the most difficult day I've had to endure in my parliamentary career. I wanted to let the House know that today I lost my first family member. Having spoken about how they are in a church in Gaza City, perhaps for lack of food, perhaps for dehydration. Their health deteriorated in the last week and they couldn't get to the hospital they needed. Today, I wanted to vote for peace. I wanted to be voting for a two-state solution because that's the only way that these horrors will never be seen again. I wanted to vote for getting Hamas out of Gaza. And I wanted to vote for those reasons for an immediate bilateral ceasefire, so that families like mine, but also families in Israel, don't have to endure this anymore. I urge colleagues from all sides to bear in mind that this is more than just party politics right now.
Quiet riot. Quiet riot.
Do you feel lonely though? Because obviously you've got quite a lot of the independent MPs and some of the more left-wing voices within the Labour Party that will speak up for Palestine. But do you, separately from them, feel a bit of a lone voice? Do you wish there were more people? So like my dad was on the APPG for sickle cell anemia because he said to me, darling, it's the one disease I can't get.
Yeah.
So it's incumbent upon me to be involved and to help them.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be those who are genetically predisposed to the condition that advocate for themselves, while no voice can ever be more powerful than that. But, do your colleagues sort of give you a nice pat on the back after a great speech and make you think, well, next time, why don't you fucking make it?
Well, I would say actually before Gaza, I felt totally lonely. Because I was raising settlement building. I was raising two-state solution. I put down the bill for recognition of Palestine every single year that I was there, and it felt really niche. And I kind of did it as a point of principle, because if I'm not going to do it, who's going to do it? And, faced some people who were like, please don't do this, it's too controversial. I'm like, what did you think I was going to do? Of course I'm going to do this. And then I'm delighted, of course, that the government have done it and I would argue it's a first step. And my concern with the government did it is they now keep saying, but we did that. And I was like, well, I'm glad, better late than never, and I will give you that. But please, can it be a first, not a last step? So yes, I don't mind being lonely, but I felt this real strong sense of, this is the history of my family bearing down on me. I can't not speak up now that I'm in this position. And when flashpoints came, what I did do, though, is I prepared my own party for it. And so when I was Foreign Affairs spokesperson, and I thought to myself, well, what is the legacy I can leave my party and, in our fourth party in Parliament position, what can I do that might influence this? We got together our, Liberal Democrat Friends of Israel side, which have always believed in a two-state solution, I should add, the Friends of Palestine side, the wider party, explained some of this intricacy, got them round the table, did negotiations. It took months and months and months, and created a Liberal Democrat policy that brought all sides of the party together. And that happened before Gaza. So when Gaza came,
they were prepared.
We were prepared because I could see it was coming. So I think, not see it was coming.
Well,
that's wrong. That's wrong.
I
need to really clarify that. No one saw Gaza. In fact, I was asked by Richard Madeley if I saw it coming, basically insinuating that all Palestinians had some secret terrorist network or something. He apologized, I should add. So no one saw specifically that happening. But you could pretty much predict that the crisis around this was going to come. So knowing that, what could I bring to the table? Well, that long view. And also that we need to get everyone round a table. If we can't do it in the bloody Liberal Democrats, and if we can't do it as a nation, then how on earth can we expect Palestinians and Israelis to do it too? It's the very least we can do. So to those who say, well, of course you would say that, I would also say at no point have I ever accepted anti-Semitism. At no point have I ever accepted that, this reject Zionism and State of Israel should never exist or whatever. I've never, ever taken those lines that I would consider quite simplistic in the way that they talk about it. And I think what I can bring to it is a humanization, but also a sense of nuance, which is just not popular in politics generally. But if you treat Israel-Palestine conflict without any nuance, you are getting it wrong. If anyone thinks, and just one final thought, I think a lot of people who look at this issue think, well, if I'm going to, from my armchair in wherever I am in the UK. I'm going to read up on this and I'm going to come to some kind of adjudicated view in my mind about who is right. And this is just difficult. The fact is there is a dual history here. The fact is that both Israelis who want their own land and, to escape persecution and to feel safe and all the rest of it, and the Palestinians who feel intensely aggrieved by what's happened and want their own land and their own space where they can live in dignity and security. And those two histories are often not just different, they are often diametrically opposite, but they are both correct. And once you accept that, that's the starting point for real understanding. If you are coming to this as only one side is right all the time ever, you will misstep. So that's really hard, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not what my emotions say. It's not what I was taught as a kid.
I bet.
But from how can I help this now? That is what I would urge people to do. It's not easy, but it's the only way we are ever going to get to a point. And I think most people still want this, that two-state solution, two people living side by side in dignity and security.
So, Layla, you've given our listeners lots to watch and read. Is there anything else that you would like them to do?
The E1 settlement is urgent. And if you don't know much about it, do a bit of research. My advice, first of all, is please don't get AI or ChatGPT to write your letter to your MP, but write to your MP yourself, ideally, even if it's short but authentic, and ask them to look into this. And as part of this, they must urge the government to ban trading with the illegal settlements. That is the obvious step for the government to take.
Thank you very much. We will leave a link in the show notes to where you can also find your MP's contact details.
Quiet, Riot.
And now it's time for a little bit of good news, and we couldn't need it anymore. Right now it's time for Grin and Share It.
Good news is welcome to me. Bad news is hell come to me. Good news. I want good news.
What have you got for us today, Naomi?
Well, it's another urban greenifying story, but I think it's quite a lovely one. Philadelphia long held the unwanted title of America's poorest big city, and for decades its black neighborhoods bore the brunt of all of that, hollowed out by deindustrialization, left with thousands of abandoned, weed-choked areas that became magnets for drug dealing and fly tipping and gun crime. But since the late 90s, a quietly brilliant program, and we do love Quiet Riot, so this is an example of that, that was run by the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, has been doing something almost embarrassingly simple and just tidying them up. So clearing the rubbish, cutting the grass, getting rid of the weeds, adding some soil, and that's it. That is the plan. That was all that the plan was. But the results are anything but basic.
You're looking at flowers on the outside. You're looking at green food that's planted on the inside.
Estelle Vaughn takes pride in the community garden she's helped nourish next to her childhood home in the Tioga neighborhood of Philadelphia. Butterflies and birds float around sunflowers and roses.
You're driving through North Philadelphia and you see an oasis, and people literally slow down.
Adam Hill is the director of community gardens with PHS.
One of our main goals is to build social cohesion and build community. And it's really beautiful to see that happen through flowers and greening and gardening.
PHS also encourages residents to beautify their blocks. Ariel Presley won a cash prize of $300 for her front porch. Presley says she wanted to bring a sense of hope to her neighborhood.
I see more people sitting outside on the front porch. I see more plants on the front porch. I see people cleaning more and taking pride of their neighborhood, their streets, and just more community.
Vaughn says she wants to highlight the positive things that don't always make the headlines.
They want to shock you and tell you awful things, whereas the good things, can you tell us some of that too? And this is a good thing that we see. And when people walk by, they'll say things like, is this North Philly? It is North Philly.
You fast forward 2 decades and these neighborhoods next to these greened areas saw a near 30% drop in gun violence, 21% drop in burglaries, and residents living nearby were 41% less likely to experience depression. So mental health, as we know, has such a direct link to, crime. Anyway, property values have gone up. Program is maintaining about 12,000 of these mini areas across the city, about 15 million square feet. And it costs $300 per month for each one to be maintained. So in the scale of public expenditure for Philadelphia, nothing at all. And as crime fighting strategies go, that is a lot cheaper than most of the alternatives out there. So I think the lesson Philadelphia is quietly teaching the rest of the world is sometimes the most radical thing you can do is to, stop treating people as a problem, look at where they live, tidy them up a bit. Neglected spaces signal that nobody cares about you.
Neglect.
And as soon as you signal that we are not going to let you neglect, then green spaces reduce stress,
dignity and respect for your own
build
environment.
community, and make the police less likely to perceive a threat where there isn't one. So you get fewer, interventions and race-based interventions by the police. Trust between them all grows. And who knew that a bit of grass and the odd pollinator garden could do what decades of tough on crime policing couldn't? So the city is now testing the model in nearby Chester. And hopefully more of them are going to be rolled out. So literally watch this space.
That's, I find that hugely inspirational.
That's made me smile.
Yeah. Thank you, Naomi. And listeners, as ever, we'll drop a link in the show notes so that you can not just grin, but also share it.
And that is the end of today's show. Huge thanks, Layla. That was fabulous.
My
Absolutely
absolute
fabulous.
pleasure, as ever.
Your journey from West London to the West Bank is a nugget. Absolute nugget.
And thank you also to everyone who's tuned in. If you can help support the show, head over to ko-fi.com/Quiet Riot Pod for a $5 a month so we can keep bringing the show free to everyone at the same time, regardless of any ability to pay.
We'll be back on Sunday covering the things that have happened since today's show. So until then, keep on rioting, but do it quietly.
We do love you very much,
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangita. Artwork by Simone Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot.
Although you might want to rephrase who knew that a little
Grass.
bit of grass.
Yeah.
Would
I knew he was
mellow
going to say that.
Philadelphia.
Grow a few mushrooms, a bit of grass, you'll be all right. Cures depression, causes it sometimes.